All right, everyone, gather around, because the moment we've all been bracing ourselves for is finally pulling up to the doorstep. The Iceman is days away from defrosting, and yet somehow the closer we get, the more catastrophic this entire situation is starting to look. Less than a single week stands between us and what was supposed to be a cultural coronation, a victory parade, a generational moment. But I'm telling you right now, with every ounce of conviction I have, it is shaping up to be a public execution, and Drake himself is the one holding the rope. So sit tight, lock in, pull the blanket over your knees, and let's say it together one more time for the timeline, because the chill is real and the embarrassment is even realer than the chill. Now, when it comes to Drake, I want you to listen very carefully, because the leaks have officially landed, and what I am about to walk you through are confirmed lyrics straight off the Iceman track list, and they are far more humiliating than your imagination is equipped to handle. If anyone out there was still clinging to this fantasy that the Spiteman album was going to gracefully sidestep Kendrick Lamar and pretend the last 2 years never happened, you are in for a rude, frost-bitten awakening. So let's not waste another breath. Before we dive into the deep end of this disaster, you already know the routine. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and please, for the love of hip-hop itself, leave that thumbs up, because I refuse to watch another wave of Drake loyalists try to bury this truth before it reaches the timeline. The humiliation train has officially left the station. The brakes have been cut, and we are riding it straight into Friday at full velocity. Now then, with everything unfolding around the Canadian crooner, and with what is rapidly transforming into one of the most cringeworthy and consequential album rollouts in the entire history of rap music, you have probably noticed something deeply strange. Less than 7 days from the alleged biggest moment of the so-called biggest artist on the planet, and there is no oxygen in the room. No anticipation, no electricity, no cultural buzz, nothing. So what exactly is the Toronto trickster doing about it? Well, he's doing what he always does. He's winding up his stable of paid mouthpieces, his bargain bin media foot soldiers, and his oversized adult cheerleaders, and he is begging them to manufacture excitement that organically refuses to exist. And while academics is busy taking a victory parade around DoorDash's quarterly earnings call like he personally fried the chicken, Drake had to reach into the bullpen and call up none other than OVO Mal, instructing him to drop a cryptic tweet that simply read, "Make them cry." And listen, beneath the surface of a half-century-old man simping for another almost half-century-old man, there is a recurring pattern at play here. Every single time Mal posts one of these eerie little riddles, it means he just got off the phone with Drake, or he just got briefed on whatever twisted narrative the OVO war room is cooking up to feed the public. And you might want to bookmark this phrase, "make them cry," because by every indication, this is going to be the single track that becomes the centerpiece of the meltdown when this glacial mess finally drops. If you scroll back through the archive, Drake himself posted a story late in 2025 featuring that exact phrase, "make them cry." For context, he was pulling from a 1979 video art piece titled "Kiss the Girls, Make Them Cry," because of course the man is once again attempting to costume himself in borrowed intellectualism and pretend he is some sort of curator of high art. But there's a much deeper layer here, because inside the little echo chamber of grifters and clout-chasing parasites that Drake has been quietly bribing into loyalty, this song has apparently been circulating, and select people have managed to get their eyes on real verses. And one insider, who incidentally has built a fairly trustworthy track record over the past year, leaking everything from rollout plans to feature lists, dropped the bomb right after Mal's tweet went live. Connect the dots, because this is identical to what Mal pulled with What Did I Miss roughly a month before that track surfaced, which only confirms that this loser is consistently steps ahead of the curve. This insider posted the lyrics, kept them up for maybe 30 minutes, then scrubbed them off the timeline. A lot of people blinked and missed it entirely. So consider this a world premiere, because we are about to read the actual ink from the album of a rapper who allegedly doesn't even hold the pen. Brace yourselves, because the first leaked line reads as follows: "I never forget that July, the worst I felt in a while."
Now hold on. Is anyone, anywhere, still going to stand on the position that this is not the beef record? That this is not the Spiteman, the Spider-Man, the White Man album in disguise? Because that single bar shreds every defense Drake's loyalists have spent 2 years constructing. Whether Drake actually raps that line, mumbles it on an interlude, or whispers it on some weepy bridge, that sentence is unmistakable confessional content. Someone wrote down exactly how Drake felt during his worst moment, and Drake printed it onto wax. And if you've forgotten what July is referencing, allow me to refresh the wound. He is not talking about July of 2025 when the Iceman rollout limped to life. He is talking about July of 2024, exactly 365 days before What Did I Miss dropped. The precise afternoon Kendrick Lamar ambushed the entire culture by releasing the Not Like Us video right in the middle of the Michael Rubin White Party, an event Drake himself was attending. That move was tactical genius, surgical, cinematic, one of the most ruthlessly elegant chess plays the genre has ever witnessed. And honestly, I don't think we revisit that day with enough reverence. Drake was standing inside the most exclusive celebrity gathering in the world, while the most viral cultural earthquake of the decade detonated under his feet. So if Drake is genuinely anchoring this entire album around July 2024 as his emotional rock bottom, I will reluctantly hand him a small piece of credit. At minimum, the man has correctly identified the exact moment he experienced peak public humiliation, the precise timestamp of his cultural collapse, and making the case, very gently, for whatever artistic merit Iceman might claim. I do believe there is a deliberate symmetry to Drake firing off What Did I Miss on the 4th of July in 2025, exactly 1 year after that music video gutted him. There is a poetic duality embedded in that timing, an attempt to flip the calendar against Kendrick. The rollout obviously derailed afterward. The album got pushed back against his own wishes, and the entire plan unraveled. But the symbolic intention was there. And honestly, if Make Them Cry really is the spiritual sequel to What Did I Miss, if it really is the second swing at the same pitch he whiffed on the very first time around, then this track is shaping up to be the centerpiece moment Drake is banking his entire comeback narrative on. The re-entry single, the re-confrontation, the petty, twisted, revisionist mission statement. That's why he was teasing this phrase cryptically months and months ago. That's why Mal is dropping it like a code word right now. And I have to address every Drake apologist who spent 2 years insisting he wasn't going to acknowledge the beef, who pretended deep down he believed he won that war. We told you so. The world told you so. Kendrick told you so. And now Drake himself is telling you so, in his own lyrics, leaking from his own album, written about his own meltdown. Because let's apply some basic logic here. The winner of a battle does not describe the morning after as the worst he has felt in a while. That is not victory language. That is grieving language. That is the sound of a man who got publicly dismantled and is still bleeding emotionally a full year and a half later. And the broader pattern reinforces it. The Not Like Us music video clearly carved something permanent into Drake's psyche. Every single one of his crash outs since then traces back to that footage, from him messaging Elliott Wilson with a rat emoji for being on the Compton set, to the leaked DMs between him and Academics' team where Drake was at that white party frantically asking if they had seen it. The man has been hyper-fixated, obsessed, haunted, and Iceman is shaping up to be the audio receipt of that obsession. But it gets worse. The same source, before deleting again, dropped a second lyric, and this one might actually be more embarrassing than the first. It reads, "They'll act like I lost my appeal, but they'll pay me for changing their mind." Now, I'll be fair, this is marginally above Drake's usual lyrical floor, because there is a half-decent double entendre buried inside. On one reading, he is talking to the fickle listeners, flipping back and forth on whether they love him, which for the bandwagon casuals is admittedly somewhat true.
On another reading, he is jabbing at the industry, the executives, the gatekeepers who declared his appeal expired, but will allegedly pay him once they reverse course.
But here is the trap door. When you factor in the literal legal appeal Drake filed in the Not Like Us lawsuit, that line transforms into something far more revealing. If Drake, a self-styled wordsmith, is writing, "They act like I lost my appeal," he is consciously layering the public's diminished interest in him on top of his crumbling legal battle with his own record label. And if that is the case, this album is dropping every guardrail he had remaining. The lawsuit, the label, Lucian Grange, the fallout, the receipts, the regrets, everything is on the table. Which sounds bold on paper, but in practice means Drake is about to spend an entire album tap dancing around legal exposure while trying to make it sound musical. There is no version of that exercise that ends with respectable art. There is no scenario, none, where Iceman emerges from that legal and emotional gauntlet as a coherent body of work. It is going to play like a jilted ex screaming through a megaphone in a parking lot, and these leaked bars are already standing as the proof of concept. The worst I've felt in a while is not bravado, it's not cold, it's not iconic, it is, frankly, pathetic. And if this is the actual flagship song, the alleged red button moment, the lead emotional artillery of the album, then Iceman is not just a flop in waiting, it is a structural earthquake about to redraw the contours of Drake's entire career, not by innovating the genre, but by regressing it, not by elevating his legacy, but by burying it under a snowdrift of his own bitterness. And the cruel irony of all of this is, even as these leaks pile up one on top of the other, the temperature outside isn't actually cold yet. Do you feel the chill creeping in yet? Do you feel the frost climbing up the windows? Do you sense the white man tiptoeing across the horizon line? Because if you somehow lost track of the calendar, Iceman officially drops Friday, May 15th, with the fourth Iceman episode airing Thursday night, May 14th. The slop is incoming. Officially icy season. Officially spite season. Officially whatever you want to call this microwaved megaloaf season. Drop your best nickname for it in the comments below, because I am genuinely running out of mockery, and that almost never happens to me when it comes to this particular man. And after this might be the last quiet moment we get before the OVO echo chamber detonates across every timeline, I took a long, honest look at the landscape of the rap game right now, and something painfully obvious crystallized in front of me. According to every Burger King boardroom general and DoorDash Dauphin running point on Drake's PR, the biggest artist on earth is about to deliver his most anticipated body of work in years, the album that will rebalance the cosmos and remind us all who the true sovereign of the genre is. And yet, from the top of that pyramid to the bottom, I have heard zero substantive conversation about the music. Nothing about the production, the sonics, the creative direction, the artistic statement, nothing. So what are Drake's foot soldiers talking about instead? Well, the actual king has resurfaced. And no, I'm not referring to the man releasing an album next week. I'm referring to the man who, simply by existing, by walking outside, by sipping a coffee, by smiling at a stranger, manages to dominate the cultural bloodstream of hip-hop. If you haven't seen it yet, Kendrick Lamar surfaced again in public, casually, organically, in a way we almost never get to witness from him, and the entire OVO ecosystem detonated into chaos all over again. And if you've lost track of how many meltdowns these people have endured, let me run the highlight reel. Over the past handful of weeks, we have watched ranking OVO lieutenants, certified Drake loyalists, and the Weiler stan community erupt over a man squatting in a photograph, posing in his natural stance. We watched them lose composure over Kendrick walking through Disneyland with his family. We watched them, and this remains my favorite, descend into a full-on rage spiral because Kendrick was holding a coffee cup inside that same Disneyland. A coffee cup. Pathetic does not begin to cover it. Then they melted because he made a list of greatest songwriters. Then they melted because he showed up in a New York Times photo shoot without smiling enthusiastically enough for their taste. A grown man stood still for a camera, and they lost their entire week to it.
And for anyone still gripping the conspiracy that this man has no influence, that his career has stalled, that his cultural relevance has dried up, his coffee runs, his theme park trips, and his motionless headshots are producing more news cycles than the so-called blockbuster album rollout of the year. So with no plausible deniability left, with Drake's frosty disaster lurking just around the corner, The one going viral right now is once again Kendrick Lamar. He's everywhere you look. He's the gravitational center. He's the heartbeat of every cultural conversation, every grifter's failed cosplay attempt, every barbershop debate from coast to coast. And to every single member of the Drake fan base still glued to your timeline, refreshing for crumbs at 3 in the morning, I have to say this with my whole chest, with my entire soul, with every fiber of my being. You have officially outdone yourselves in unprecedented fashion. I genuinely did not believe you could discover a more humiliating reason to break down crying on the timeline. But you've cracked the code. Because if Disneyland and squatting weren't enough, do I have a story for you? They are now, and I am not exaggerating, losing their minds because Kendrick Lamar donated to and visited his old high school, Centennial High in Compton. He has referenced the school in his music for over a decade, and after Kendrick attended a groundbreaking ceremony alongside other natives of that area, including Dr. Dre and will.i.am, both alumni of the same campus, a special program was held, clips began circulating, and one particular video took off, a clip of Kendrick reuniting with his 7th grade science teacher. It is unbelievably wholesome, genuine, sincere, deeply human, almost cinematic in its quiet warmth. The kind of scene you cannot manufacture with a publicist or stage with a camera crew. When have you ever witnessed an artist of that stratospheric magnitude, fresh off headlining the most watched broadcast in television history, return to his community not as a celebrity but as a neighbor, kneeling down for actual conversation with the people who raised him? It is rare. It is beautiful. There is nothing remotely controversial about it. And yet, the most miserable, terminally online portion of the Drake fan base, the same crew that turned DoorDash into a Fortune 500 success story, is absolutely incinerated by it, furious, convulsing. They cannot stomach the sight of a wholesome Kendrick moment. And now the conspiracies are flowing. They are claiming Kendrick's visit was staged. They are accusing his relationship with the teacher of being fabricated. They are alleging the viral video was boosted by bot farms. They are floating the theory that PG Lang, TDE, and even UMG coordinated this exact moment to siphon attention away from Iceman. Yes, they genuinely believe a clip of a man hugging his middle school science teacher is part of a multinational corporate plot to sabotage Drake's release week. If that is the hill you are dying on, the issue is no longer about hip-hop. The issue is something far deeper than anything a rap album can fix. But this is also a reminder of something I've coined before and will keep coining. This is Kendrick Lamar derangement syndrome operating at peak voltage. The grip this man has on the culture, on his rivals, on the audience, on the discourse, is unlike anything we've ever measured. Because beyond the comedy of watching a fan base implode over a charity visit, there is something genuinely unsettling here. These people are never going to recover from what Kendrick did to Drake. He warned them on whacked-out murals, and that prophecy keeps growing more accurate by the week. I'm not sure even Kendrick fully anticipated how total his psychological capture of his rival's fan base would become. And to be this close to your own album release, with the cultural oxygen entirely consumed by a clip of Kendrick hugging a teacher, well, that should be 5-alarm fire concerning for the OVO war room. They keep accusing Kendrick of obsession while displaying textbook obsession themselves. Drake is never going to be relevant again without Kendrick Lamar. Read that line twice, slowly. The only reason his fan base still has any volume at all is because of his rival. The only reason this rollout retains a single degree of heat is because of his rival. The only reason anyone is actively tuning in to Iceman in the first place is to see how he addresses his rival. Every other commercial asset he once possessed, the hit-making, the radio dominance, the meme economy, the romantic anthem pipeline, has evaporated.
And there's a brutal lesson coming for Drake and his entire operation, one that's actually devastatingly simple. All he ever had to do, the only thing required to escape Kendrick's shadow, was admit defeat, concede the battle, walk away with dignity.
If Drake had ever publicly acknowledged that he lost to Kendrick, hip-hop history pivots in that instant. Not because it would have elevated Kendrick further, the man was already cemented, but because it would have stopped Drake's fan base from spiraling into a 2-year hunt that has rotted the entire community. Instead, he chose villainization. He chose victimhood. He chose to keep the metaphorical bounty on Kendrick's head. And now his fans treat every coffee cup, every selfie, every charitable appearance as ammunition. They are looking for a gotcha that doesn't exist, hunting for evidence to validate a war they already lost. And the comparison that keeps haunting me is Jay-Z after Nas, because the blueprint too, often dismissed, is actually the cleanest blueprint, no pun intended, for how to lose a beef gracefully and survive it. Jay acknowledged the loss on the title track. He admitted Ether altered his trajectory. Then he pivoted, used the rest of the album to showcase his range, his curation, his executive mind, his hit-making, his collaborative ear. The result wasn't perfect, but it preserved his standing as a top-tier artist. He absorbed the L, stamped it on his resume, and kept walking. Because every great rapper has a loss somewhere on the ledger. Drake is doing the exact opposite, the textbook inverse. Drake is constructing an entire album whose thesis is, I didn't actually lose. And that single creative miscalculation has already poisoned the project before a single track is dropped. Because audiences are now expecting Family Matters Part 2. They want a red button. They want a smoking gun. They want a rabbit pulled from a hat that will retroactively rewrite history. Nothing on earth can live up to that. If Drake had just locked in and crafted something on the level of Take Care or Nothing Was the Same, he could have moved forward. But he chose the courtroom approach to music making, and now even if he tries to pivot away from the beef, it will look like cowardice. He has trapped himself inside his own narrative, locked the door, and swallowed the key. And so here we stand. Iceman is days away, the buzz is colder than the title, and the only thing currently galvanizing his base is more Kendrick discourse, which means these supposed humiliating Kendrick moments are actually feeding Kendrick more than they are starving him. Every meltdown is free promotion. Every coffee cup conspiracy is a trending tag. Every accusation of bot farms is another reminder that Kendrick lives rent-free in their nervous systems. So let me know in the comments, what is your read on the Iceman situation? Do you genuinely believe this album is repairing Drake's image, or is it accelerating the burial? Are you tuning in ironically, sincerely, or just to hear how spectacularly the wheels fall off? Do you want him to engage Kendrick directly, or do you want him to abandon the beef and make actual music? I'm genuinely curious, because this is one of the strangest rollout dynamics we've ever witnessed in the genre, and I cannot wait to see what stunts academics and the rest of the propaganda brigade pull next to inject artificial momentum into a project the culture is actively rejecting. Because right now, Kendrick Lamar talking to his 7th grade teacher is bigger hip-hop news than a brand new Drake album. Let that whole sentence sink in for a long moment. So there is genuinely nothing left to do except pull up a chair, pour something warm, and watch the Spiteman melt down to a slow, steady puddle in real time on a live stream that nobody actually asked for. If you made it this far, thank you genuinely. Drop a like, subscribe, hype the video, do all of it. You are genuinely appreciated. Happy belated Mother's Day to every mother watching. And if you want to stay on this ride and see how Kendrick is reportedly back in the studio cooking up something that may detonate the rest of this year, you do not want to miss what's coming. Check out the suggested video on screen right now, because the temperature is about to drop on someone in this rap game, and I can promise you with absolute certainty, it is not going to be Kendrick Lamar.